Hello everybody, it's Christine at CL Aldridge Art, and the other day in my journey through my art video, a comment was made by Lori Barnes, who asked if I would ever consider doing a tutorial on using Inktense. I of course referred her to May Brox's channel, who is an expert at using Inktense. I am not. I have just begun. Everything I now know about them, I know through watching May. But May egged her on and said she thought it would be a good idea if I did this. So May, I'm going to do it. So the first thing is that this is my set of Derwent 72. If you don't know what Inktense are, they are water-soluble ink pencils. I keep this ribbon on mine because more than once I have had to pick them all up off the floor because this lid does not stay on the tin very well. And I don't have those big pencil books or anything like that, so I just settle the issue by tying a pretty ribbon around it. So these are the pencils. As you can see, they come in lovely shades. There are 2 trays in the 72. And I am going to do this. How do I want to do this? This is where the other part of the lid comes in handy, because these are sort of flimsy. So if you set the second one in the tray, then you can move them around and set them out in front of you or do whatever it is you want to do. Other things that I have. This is just a plate with a self-explanatory. I could have gotten a clean one, but minutia that I don't have to deal with. These are my water brushes. I ordered these from Amazon. This is the box they came in. They are AquaNaut flow brushes. They were supposedly put together by the Pro Artist Supply Company. They were like $11 on Amazon, and they have a filler tube to put the water in, but I've never really found that necessary. They unscrew like this, and you just put water in there and screw them back on. Pop the lid, and there you go. You operate them by squeezing the water. I have them in 3 sizes. I found that I like to work with all 3 sizes at once, depending upon what I'm working on. So I just make sure that they're all kind of full of water. This one could probably use a little more, but we'll see if I even use that one. And this is the book that I'm going to be demonstrating in. This is my first book, Flowers and Dreams, and the image that I have picked out is this one. It is the cover image from the book. That one. This is just the plastic piece of chopping mat that I got at the dollar store and cut especially for my 8.5 by 11-inch books. Since this is a water medium, I of course will be using it. The other thing that I have are my bulldog clips. This is Create Space paper, so don't freak out. Everything will be fine. I usually put one up there. The cool thing about these clips is they fold down so they're out of the way in the back. And then I'll put one here. These are just to prevent the paper from buckling. I usually can get away with 2. The third one often gets in the way. If I'm going to get it really, really wet, then I'll put 6 all the way around. But I don't think I need that many. And getting started. Trying to make sure that the is that gonna sorry guys, you'll just have to deal with looking at the back side of my ugly watercolor one, or watercolor marker one. And so let's have some fun. I guess the first thing I need to do is settle on a color scheme, and for lack of a better option, and just so that I'm not, well, actually no, we're going to make up our own color scheme. It's not going to matter where I start, so I think I'll just start with this particular flower. I will probably start with the center, and I think I would like to make that a very pretty yellow. So my choices are now wait a minute. Wait just 1 second. I went and, told you all about how wonderful having a swatch book is. How bad would it be if I didn't even use it? Okay, these are my Derwent Inktense colors. So as you can see, I've got several yellows and oranges to choose from. I do believe that I'm going to start out with the lightest shade, which is this sherbet lemon. So it's almost a neon. Alright, so you just simply, you're not really coloring the whole thing. You're just throwing in a little pigment right away. Let me see if I can zoom you in. Hopefully that will be close enough. I apologize for the shadow. Lights are definitely on my list of things to buy. Someday when I can afford them. So all I'm doing is just putting in a little bit. What I'm going to do with this is I have a tendency to work in coats. So this will just be a first coat to get a base color down. That'll do. Okay, now make sure the water is flowing. I also have, just in case, I've always got a little jar of water nearby just to get things started. So May showed me this. You just get the part where you want the color to go a little bit wet, activate it, and just pull it out like magic. And as you can see, you're not soaking the page or soaking the paper. You're just getting it wet enough for the color to move. And Inktense is very responsive. So you can just move it right out there. And that'll be a nice base coat. We can come in later with perhaps a darker shade of yellow, add some shading and intensity to that. Okay, now moving on. What color do we think that this flower should be? In my world, pencils jump out of their case. Okay. What would be a pretty color for this flower? Probably nothing on this side. Let's see here. It's a yellow flower. Okay, I think I'm gonna do the same thing that Virginia did on my cover. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the fuchsia, which is 700. And it is this one. I love that Derwent both has colors and numbers, which makes finding everything easier. So all I'm going to do here is just lay down a little pigment where I want it to be the most intense. And then I'll work it out toward the ends. And so as you can see, I'm sort of pressing fairly, not hard, but I'm just letting I'm not making an effort to control the pressure. I'm just throwing pigment onto it. And you might just work a little bit of it out here, maybe along your edges of your lines. I apologize that I'm turning the book, but I don't really want to get the pink into the yellow. So, how is everybody doing tonight? It is Saturday night, and it is about 11:44 p.m. Eastern Time, USA. And this is a normal time for me to be wide awake. In fact, I usually am just sort of getting started on my day at this point. But it's also the best time in the world at around 3 o'clock in the morning to go to Walmart, especially on a Saturday, because there are no crowds at 3 o'clock in the morning. The store is open 24 hours a day. I can do all my shopping and not have to encounter people, which suits me just fine. And so I'm also working on more new drawings for my next book. which is due out next month. And of course, I have a contract to put another book together for my friend Sue. So that will be coming out. There was a little dust up in my Facebook group today about a copyright infringement. So once we got all the ruffled feathers unruffled and got that straightened around, life was good, and it put me in a good mood and made me want to color something. So let's see if May taught me anything at all. I go for the water because it's simply easier than squeezing out the brush. And by getting it a little bit wet out here first, it helps the pigment move. It doesn't look like I put quite enough pigment on there to reach the end, but so I think I just might add just a tiny bit more. Just a very, very light. As you can see, just hardly adding any color at all. And see if that will give me closer to the effect that I want. I do usually, like I say, work in multiple layers. Even in the Inktense. And that's how I can blend. I could blend colors right on the page. I'll show you a for instance of that. And I probably should. Just for no other reason than if you get the paper wet too many times, it does start to break down. But I've had it wet as many as 4 or 5 times with absolutely no pilling or anything like that. I was thinking of what I'd like to do is maybe tint my fuchsia pink with just a tad of cadmium orange, and that will give a nice pinky peach effect. So let's do that and see how we like it. What's the worst thing that can happen? So 250. I do believe that is, nope, that's the tangerine. Pardon my arms, guys. I have limited space here, so that's the cadmium orange. Is that what color I said? Yeah, it must be the cadmium orange. Yeah. Okay. So we'll add just a tad of that. Once again, just super, super light. What we call the whisper effect. You're just whispering it across the page. Um, while I'm working on this, if there is anything you guys want to know about any projects that I'm working on, artists that you know that you think might not be well known, but whose work you love, put it in the comments. Once again, I like to find out about people and things. I am not a snobby artist who thinks that I'm the only one in the world and you should only buy my work and I should never promote my competitors, because I can tell you that artists like that don't last very long. All you have to do is make an enemy out of your friends or your peers, and all of a sudden all your support is withdrawn. Okay. I apologize that I'm doing this whole thing. It's just the magic effect of these. I love the magic of watercolor, or of Derwent Inktense to begin with. It is my favorite medium in the absolute world. Love it, absolutely love everything about it. Get a little flow going there. That's better. Can you see that? I'm sorry, I don't have I'm not paying proper attention to my monitor here. At least I'm on screen. It's just magic. Ooh, I love it. Absolutely love everything about it. It's super satisfying. Just beautiful colors. Goes from looking really wonky on the page. Wait till you see it when it's dry. And everybody is going to use these tools differently. I have adapted them, of course, for my own use. But I saw May Brock's, and once again, you really need to... She is the Derwent expert, or queen. The reigning Derwent queen. And the 6-part series, I think it's 6 parts, might have only been 5, series that she did recently, Terra, which is a portrait, a fairy portrait in Linda Ravenscroft's 5th book, which you can get on Etsy if you just search Linda Ravenscroft's books. The shop will come up, and I'm going to turn the page if that's okay by everybody. Like little eyes looking out at you from the page. That is not what was on my mind when I was drawing this one, I can tell you that. Work a little bit of that over there, where we missed earlier. At any rate, and then after weeks of working on this beautiful drawing, May gave everyone a heart attack by using a dark blue watercolor on the outside frame. And it turned out absolutely fantastically, but you could see the entire group going, oh my goodness, what is she doing? Leave it to the artist. She knows what she's doing. Or not, as the case may have been. See, I shouldn't talk and paint at the same time because I forget what I'm doing. And as you can see, the brush, I mean, it picks up a tiny bit of the color once you leave that section, but it's not really enough to, you don't have to clean it through, or, you know, between every one. Oops. Wasn't very neat there. And you do want to work with this by wetting small, you know, like one thing at a time. One of the things I have found with Inktense is that it doesn't move like watercolor. Once it gets to a certain point of dryness, and it really depends upon how much pigment you use. And the theory is that it's permanent once it's dry. But that depends, that permanence really depends upon whether or not you activated all of the pigment with the water. If you didn't, then it can still get, it can still be moved around to a certain degree, just enough usually to make your work muddy, which of course is an effect that you don't want unless it's the one you're going for. And I'm telling you what, guys, it's like magic. It's like 4 coats of marker in one, a pastel marker in one go. It's just fabulous. Creates all these little subtle color blends. No two are ever the same. And mixing the colors like that. And to the benefit of Create Space paper, it does have a little tooth. So it does pick up the pigments and allows that to happen. That sort of magical pinky orange thing. Because on super smooth paper, of course, your pencils don't have any pigment to catch because there's no tooth. So you have to press harder. So oops, you can't really see this, can you? All I'm really doing here is just making sure that I clean my brush a little bit as I change colors. Okay, so moving right along, let's work on these, and I'm going to refer here to my master colorist because she was so good. So she did a pinky and a blue. I think I'll do, in keeping with the orange, what did I do with that cadmium orange? Oh, there it is. Okay. I think I'm going to lay down some bright color there. I pressed fairly hard. And there. And here. And do the same thing on this one. Just sort of doing around the edges, because that gives a nice effect when you go to pull it over, so these all look like they're rolling up. Don't I sound like I know what I'm talking about? It's all an illusion. Pay no attention to the man in the mirror. Or the man behind the curtain. That is the thing about art. You know, you just can't be afraid of art. You just have to go for it. What is the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is you're going to mess up a drawing, or you're going to mess up a coloring, or you have an epic fail like I have in some of my books. And granted, you know, the books that are available today, the expensive ones, are beautiful. And it is a shame to ruin a page. But mistakes are very often art's way of making magic. And if you think you've ruined a page, stop working on it. Set it aside. Cover it up. Get it out of your sight. And wait. And go back to it later when you're calm and you can think rationally, and you never know. You might see how to fix it immediately and be able to do that. Or you might have to wait until you see maybe somebody fix something that they've ruined that's similar to yours, and then you can go back to it. Doesn't matter if it's a day, 2 days, 5 years. It's still going to be there for you. Your book isn't ruined. That particular image might need help, as I've got a few in mind that do, but it's not ruined. And you don't have to throw your book away or buy a new copy or do any of that. It becomes really just part of the adventure of your book. I think that I really like, sorry, you can't tell what I really like from there, can you? I'm thinking either bright blue or sea blue. See what our other choices might be. I don't know, that dark aquamarine is looking pretty good. That one or that one? I'm thinking maybe I'll go with the dark aquamarine. So 1210. Oh yeah. That is in the second tray. Okay. Once again, guys, I am sorry for my arms in the way. All my little various dings. Does this happen to any of you guys where you have no idea where it happens or how it happens, but all of a sudden you look down and there's all these broken blood vessels, and it goes away. It's like a bruise, but magic. We're making magic. Let's see if I can get some of these before I have to turn it. I've been trying to train myself. I really have, to not have to turn the page, but it's just so natural to do it. Okay. Ah, there it is. Okay, when that happens, all you have to do is make sure your eraser is kind of clean. And just erase the little mistake away. Now you can't do that once it's dry, but you can do it while it's wet. So wetting the areas that I want the color to flow. See what I mean about you really have to work kind of quickly to get it to flow. And while I was turning the page, I decided it didn't want to move. Now this is going to look so much better when it's dry, because right now it looks like I've just made everything the same color, but there really is some subtle shading going on. And don't worry about that outside. We can correct that with any variety of things. Oops, sorry. And if you ever do get too much pigment on your brush tip, just dab it on your paper towel and continue on. Okay. Give the brush a little rinse in the water, since we're going to change colors. Sorry for the quiet. I'm concentrating. Pardon me. Like so many of you, I am thinking about what has transpired today and planning tomorrow, and it's amazing the capacity that the human brain has for, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you dizzy, for multitasking. You know, you're trying to do one thing, in the meantime you've got the next 4 things going on in your head. Okay, now we're going to give those a chance to dry and work on something else. And through the magic of video, this is now dry. I actually took a little break to have a little bite to eat, and we will continue on. I will quite likely, in the finished version of this video, speed this part up, or not, as the case may be. We will see. I don't want to bore you guys. With all of this. I don't have any particular singing talents to entertain you with. Pardon me. My only claim to fame, other than my art, is my memory. And I can, somewhere along the line, I managed to memorize the poem, The Jabberwocky, so I can recite that. But other than that, that's about it. Most of the time I can't remember the name of songs, although I do know most of the words. It's just so satisfying. Magic, magic, magic. Okay, and once again, back to our fuchsia for our centers. I just, now that this is dry, you can see the sort of mottled effect. That is just because it's a first coat, but the way that the tangerine and the cadmium orange and the fuchsia work together is just so pretty. I love, so the thing I love about the Derwent Inktense, and I don't know if it shows on the camera or not, but it's a really beautiful blend. It will photograph well. And do you see what I mean about the tooth of the paper? One of the complaints, of course, that the Create Space paper gets is that it leaves little white spaces. And that is because, of course, it's a very toothy paper. Oh, well, why didn't you say something? It's a very toothy paper. And that just basically means that you have to use a different blending technique with it than perhaps you would in a smooth book. If you're using regular colored pencils. Tortillions work really well. The Prismacolor blending pencil works really well. I've tried both my Deli pencils and the Prismacolors, and both of them blend beautifully with layering. So you just have to find the method that works in the book and the paper that you're choosing. Okay, and now because I've learned a little something more about how these act on in this particular design, I'm a little more confident with how much color to lay down. So this one I suspect is going to be more vibrant coming out of the first coat than this first one was. But we can fix that with a second coat on the other one. I keep referring to coats, but what I really mean are layers. Not being super careful, just making sure that there's sufficient pigment to reach all the way out. Changing to back to my cadmium orange so that I can add just a little to that. Very light layer. Sorry, taking you for a ride again. I should warn you before I do that so I don't make you dizzy. And so also in the comments below, if you would put if you prefer speed coloring or if you like doing it in real time. I'm open to either. I just don't want to make super long videos because I know that that can be a little taxing for people, especially considering that there is so much to watch on YouTube. I happen to have caught Dee Dee's show live the other morning, and she was showing these very cool books. That feature different illustrators and examples of their work and biographies. And those were absolutely lovely. And then her show, I think it was yesterday, that she did a marathon, pretty much all day stream, where she was coloring from Serene. And what I'm doing over there, by the way, is just tapping off the little excess pigment on my brush. And Dee Dee is such an inspiration for color theory when she sits down to color, holding it to three particular families of color. In this particular case, she used turquoise blue, a red, and a gold. And then there were, of course, various shades in between of those colors. But those were the three major colors. And I learned something from Dee Dee every time I watch her stream about something. And color theory and color choosing and color composition. That's what I'm trying to say. Color composition is the key. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And it's one of the things that I have now realized make my cover colorists, Virginia's work, so outstanding, is that she's excellent at color composition, and that is planning so that the colors are balanced and their use is balanced throughout the piece. And this is what I mean by that. I'm back off just a tad. So on this one, for instance, she's used really the pink. Okay, so that's one, the pink, the green, the gold, and the blue. So she's got four colors. And then, of course, there's the outside frame. But the gold works all the way down the center. So she's used it for the rings, a slight variation on it, for the feathers, and for the rings around these folds. And, you know, so all the way down the center are the yellows. Then, of course, the pinks run all the way out. So she's picked elements to be able to run the pink all the way along the outside edges of the different elements. The green works with the gold, and it, you know, also is a center, but she's brought that same green out to the edges to pull that. Then the contrast color is the blue, and so there are the two splashes of blue here, but then they're anchored by the two or the four smaller blue feather flowers here. And so compositionally, it's a very pleasing to the eye piece because of the different elements all being balanced in the overall work. And that is the key to some really beautiful coloring work. And Dee Dee is a master at that, and so is Sammy. Over at Color with Sammy. Color with a U. Coloring with Sammy. Well, the chances are that if you are watching, if you have found me, you probably already know about her. But one thing about art is that it is a learning experience every single day. I watch the art Sherpa, who paints in acrylics. Not only do I not paint in acrylics, but I have no desire to. But I learn about mixing colors from her, and because of course she's constantly mixing custom colors for the paintings that she does live or in her videos. Oh, I'm sorry for the shadow, guys. And I should zoom back in so that that doesn't happen. And it doesn't really matter what the mediums are. Color blending is color blending, in that red and blue are always going to make purple, and yellow and blue are always going to make green. But that if you mix a tiny bit of black in with any of your colors, it will really tame down their brightness, but not very much. If you mix up on your palette two complementary colors, like for instance, on a color palette, red and green are complementary, but if you mix those two colors together, they make brown. And that's true of all complementary colors. Complementary colors, when mixed together, will make either a gray or a brown, which is fine if that's what you're aiming for. But if you're not aiming for a gray or a brown, don't mix complementary colors. At least not as a paint color. On the other hand, I was watching a episode of Jennifer Stay, and she was demonstrating markers or watercolors, and when she was ready to do the final shadows, she mixed all of the watercolors on her palette together, and they made the perfect shade of shadowing gray, because they already had all of the undertones of the colors that she was working with. So she was, I believe, shading I don't remember, it was an animal or a spear or something, making it three-dimensional. And so she had that perfect gray to do her shadows with, without having to reach for a color out of the color palette, which was like a penny dropping for me. Oh, that's how that works. So it doesn't matter how much experience you have, or how long you've been doing it, or anything like that. There is always something new to learn in art. A new medium. Just today, I was listening to a pre-recorded video of that Zarget Hunter did on Zarget's channel, Zarget Hunter's channel, and she has taken up a challenge, I believe, that was started by, I want to say Melissa, who Color All the Things. about mastering a new medium. And since Argit has never colored or she's a very talented artist, but she has not used ballpoint pens to create anything with. And so she has taken on the challenge of teaching herself to draw and shade and create a drawing, a finished drawing with ballpoint pens. And I thought that was a cool, very cool challenge, and something that I would like to try. Okay, so now we've got those, and those are our base coats on our centers. Let's move out, because we want to be sure to keep let everything dry before we do anything. I do think that I would like to have pull my yellow. This the sherbet lemon is not the final shade of yellow that I'm going to want for this. Neither is this cadmium orange. I want something more of a gold, like a sunburst yellow, to be the final yellow. These are just base shades that I'm laying down to get us there. So let's try going straight to that yellow, which I think I want to go with the golden yellow. With the golden yellow over here. So that's 230. I'm keeping all my pencils out so I remember which ones we are going for. That's sienna gold. That's the golden yellow. So I'm going to want those, and I have put down way too much pigment, I think, for any kind of subtlety. So I'm just going to see if I can't take a little bit of that pigment off before I start to blend it. Got a little too enthusiastic there. Taking you for a ride. So I wanted to do those in yellow. Because I want to do these in yellow as well, or I started out there thinking that I was gonna do something different, but I think instead what I'll do is just give it an overall coat of an overall light coat of this, and then come back in because I want it to look a little bit like gold. So I'll come back in with a brown. And see if I can't achieve that. Okay. Sorry, took you for a ride again. Without warning, just close your eyes. You see me go, I just love the way these are. You are able to just lay down a nice light layer. And we'll give that a try. Let me see if we can add the brown now. Need a bigger desk. All right, so something like something like baked earth will be I think a good, or amber. Actually, amber might work better for the brown to make gold. Or I could just use mustard. Mustard is a really pretty gold color, but we'll see if we can give it a little more dimension. So 1710. Pull this down here so I'm not reaching all the way across. Sadly, my little eyes do not see. There it is, amber. You can also, if you decide that you want a more in-depth color, you can take the pigment right off these pencils with the brush. That is something that I will do in the last stages of coloring this, but I don't want to do it just yet. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit in the corners. So I'm going to work it out so it looks like it's curved right here. And that the light is going to, the lightest point will be here on these axes. I'm all about the metal. Love the light. Going for a ride. Just a tiny, tiny line of this right along the edge. And hoping the camera is not, or the microphone is not catching my growling stomach. Or it also, by turning the page, it helps me keep it in the light so I can show you out of the shadows that my hand makes. My light source is up in that direction, obviously, and it's just not the best source of lighting, and those halo lights are just a fortune. I saw a lady make a halo light, a do-it-yourself halo light out of LED Christmas lights and the white LED Christmas lights and a wreath that, you know, the wreath frame that you get at Michael's. I thought, now that's an interesting idea. I just haven't figured out a way to mount it to my tripod yet. I guess I'd have to get a separate arm for that. I have one of those old magnifying lamps with the halo light, but Somehow or another I lost the piece that lets you attach it to your desk. I'm sure it's in a box somewhere. I just don't happen to know where the box is. I know where the lamp is. When I moved into this house 15 years ago, I put a ton of boxes in the garage that I would get around to unpacking later, and whatever was in them, I haven't needed it in 15 years because I never have unpacked those boxes. All my old show equipment is in there, tents, rugs, lighting, all of that. I just don't know exactly where. Ooh, I think that'll be pretty. Going for a ride. See how adding that brown just immediately gives it more that gold lighted effect? It does from here. I don't know if you can actually see that on camera. It's just so satisfying. Painting with a brush. Gives you that whole Bob Ross feel. My happy little metal pieces. And as you can see, the Create Space paper is not pilling up. It's not peeling. It is going to buckle a little bit. And anything that isn't watercolor paper is going to buckle a little bit. That's what the pins are for, because once it's dry, it won't be buckled anymore. And heck, you can always iron it. If the buckles bother you that much, drag out your old iron and your ironing board. Throw down a couple of protective sheets of linen and iron to your heart's content. Like they used to iron newspapers for the aristocrats. Because the newspaper, of course, was not readable unless it was not had a, didn't have any folds in it. I don't quite understand that, but then there's a lot of things in this life I don't understand. Exclusivity, I don't get the draw of that. Gated communities where people live behind fences, I don't understand that one either. I had a lady the other day ask me, she says, well, aren't you worried in this neighborhood? Because I walk at night. To me, running up to the 7-Eleven on foot at 3 o'clock in the morning is nothing. And she says, well, aren't you scared? And I'm like, lady, I walked up and left my front door wide open for 3 days, and nobody bothered my house. I was on my way to the airport. I was in a hurry. I needed to run in the house, get something. Completely forgot to close the door behind me. And 3 days later, I come home and the front door is still open. Nobody's been in the house. There's nothing missing. And nobody bothered a thing. So, other than making sure that I'm actually paying attention, I don't get frightened about things like that. I do worry about folks who constantly have their faces stuck in their phones, though, because I do think that you have to be aware of your surroundings. Like, I'm smart. I walk down the middle of the street. I don't, I avoid the hedges where there are shadows, deep shadows, or where, it would be an ideal place for somebody to jump out at you. And I'm constantly looking around, listening. Because I can run pretty fast. And I can shout pretty loud when I want to. Just light layers. These are definitely not tools for the heavy-handed, because if you lay down too much pigment, it's a beautiful color, but you lose all the subtlety of the Inktense. One more ride around we go. And a little bit of the amber again in the corners. That's such a pretty color. Sorry about the air conditioner keeps kicking on. Doesn't it know that it's already the first day of fall? It should not be kicking on. I got a power bill yesterday that about made me pull out my hair. $124, which for me is a big power bill. My power bill usually runs only about $65. And it's got nothing to do with, I just keep the heat set it, or the cooler set at about 79 degrees. So at that, that's not particularly cool in the house. But it's certainly livable. Okay. And then I do turn the lights off in rooms that I'm not in. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. I did pause the video to have a coughing attack. And now I'm back. Going for a ride. So while I was thinking just now, I was thinking about coloring book reviewers. And for about 3 years now, I've been trying to get Claire from Color with Claire to review my books, but she never has. But that's okay, I forgive her. Mine is not the kind of art that she likes, and I have learned to accept that. But I would highly recommend her as a coloring book reviewer that you should definitely follow. And the reason, of course, is that her reviews are thorough. She researches the artist. She's really active in the coloring world, and she knows what she's talking about, which is why everybody wants her to review their books. And I get that. The other one that I would recommend is Lee at Coloring Queen. Now, Lee is from Australia, and she specifically will not, or does not, take solicited reviews. She only does reviews of books that she actually buys. She has been a supporter of mine since I started. She did the very first, what I would call professional review of my books. And I am forever grateful to her. Her reviews also are thorough. She gets all sorts of interesting books because being in Australia, she's much closer, of course, to Japan and Korea, and so she gets the really cool books that come from that part of the country and tells all the rest of us about them. And of course, that's how they get popular here in the United States and in the UK. The other one is a new reviewer on the scene, and that is Deb over at the Modernist Colorist. He also reviews books that he buys, and not only is his take on the books unique because he's a male in a female-dominated hobby, but he also has a wonderful way of scouting out a book that the rest of us probably missed. And I have already purchased 3 of the books that he's reviewed that I knew nothing about. The first one is by Good Wives and Warriors, and it's the To the Ends of the Earth and Back, and it is marvelous. He reviewed one today called Body Ink, which is now on my list. I love tattoo art. And he did one other. It was early on, and it was after he'd done the, he did a review of a rock and roll album cover graphic novel coloring book, or graphic coloring book. And I liked it, but it wasn't that one that I have on my list. It was one of the others from that particular review series. At any rate, and he also reviews tools, and he's a really good channel to follow. Okay, now, what next? I think, because I want to use this blue out here, I also want to pull in green. I definitely want green in here. And I want, let's do some big things. Let's go ahead and put these, and we're just going to do those in the fuchsia. We're not going to do the orange in these. So let me get down here so that I'm on where you can see me. See if I can turn it this way and eliminate that shadow. Gonna have to go upside down. And there we go. Now you'll notice that I have not sharpened these. And that's because you don't want to sharpen Inktense if you don't absolutely have to. Just turn them in your hand to keep trying to get to the point. Because otherwise you waste so much pigment. And maybe it's because I'm just frugal. I don't like to waste pigment. Because these pencils are pure pigment. And back around. Okay. Might as well do this side while we're here. Excuse me. Okay. And let's see how that looks. My brush is getting a little bit too dirty as I get to that white, so I'll just tap that off. So that we can get the pigment to flow. Because it flows so much nicer onto that wet paper. Can you see that without all that shadow? Sorry. I can definitely see how an overhead light would. Be very helpful. Okay. I'm not too worried if I go just to, see I've gotten a little messy there, tiny bit out of the lines, because you can always fix that with a Posca or with your background color. Beside which, the only one allowed to create perfect things in nature is Mother Nature herself. All the rest of us have to put in a Persian blot. That's what the old rug makers from Persia used to say. Only God is Allah, I guess it was Allah. I don't know who, I don't know who their God was. Is. Persia, Iran, what is now Iran and Iraq. But whatever, whoever it is. Their weaving was so wonderful, but they used to always, on purpose, put in at least one flaw. And it became known as a Persian flaw, because God is the only one who creates things that are perfect. Okay. And so, whoops, I'm off the, here I am, I'm gonna have a fair amount of editing to do on this one. Okay. Just sort of pretending that none of you are here. I've got the book practically in my lap, which is right where it would be if you weren't here. And trying to think if anything interesting has happened that isn't of a controversial nature. Don't do controversy. I am the diplomat in every group that I go to. I am always the neutral third party who sees both sides and sees where the issues went wrong. Okay, let's do the other side. I may end up cutting this video into several sections. I don't know if I'll do that because I haven't seen how long the pieces are yet. But in the comments below, do me a favor, put down, because one thing I've noticed on YouTube, videos seem to be, especially in the coloring world, seem to be getting longer and longer and longer. And I think that that is a huge time commitment to ask of people. Even if it's a live stream and you just are popping in and out, but sitting down and, watching a video, especially if you do have other things to do. I mean, so what is your idea of the ideal time for a video? Is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it 45 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? Do you like to just sit and color while you listen to somebody talk? And if so, what kind of things do you like them to talk about? I did, sort of told you some things about growing up in the mountains, and I've got a bunch more of that. I'm 59. I left off our conversation when I was 19. So I've got a long way to go on that. Once again, I don't want to be narcissistic talking about myself. I like to make my stories not about me, but about the people that I've encountered in my life. I like to think of myself as the Mitch Albom of the people that I've gotten to know. And if you don't know who Mitch Albom is, he is an author. He wrote a very famous book called Tuesdays with Maury, and which was about his visiting with an old man. Mitch Albom at one point in time was a sports writer, and Maury was somehow involved in sports, and he interviewed him in his nursing home and ended up spending every Tuesday with him for a period of time until Maury eventually passed away. And then he wrote a book about it, which if you read any of Mitch Albom's books, be prepared to laugh, to cry, to just run a whole range of emotions. This is his latest book. I found it, of all places, at the Dollar General for 50 cents. His brand new book, hardcover, and I bought it because I couldn't stand the idea of it living in the Dollar General. I know that that's what happens to Overstock books, but to a Mitch Albom book, to me it was a crime. This one's called The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto, and it starts out on the back, I am music, and I have come for the soul of Frankie Presto. I am music, and I have come for the soul of Frankie Presto. You know it's going to be a good book. He also wrote, Mitch Albom wrote, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, which is a worthy read of everybody. It's about people that you may or may not even know, over whom you have had some effect on their lives that you never knew about, or who've had an effect on yours. So they might be people you know, they might be perfect strangers. And he did write a sequel to that book, but I have not read it. Or perhaps he is writing it and I simply have not yet seen it. But the idea that his book was at the Dollar General for 50 cents was just a crime. So now it came home along with all the other books they had, which at that price I can afford to buy them and give them away. Fortunately, they didn't have very many. I am a big reader. It is my second favorite thing to do other than draw. And drawing really is my first love now. It was always reading, but drawing has taken that over. My absolute favorite book of all time, spinning, is and always will be, I cannot foresee this ever changing, a book called Atlas Shrugged. It was written by a philosopher by the name of Ayn Rand. And it is about basically who you are in the world. Ayn Rand led a very interesting life. She started out in Bolshevik Russia and escaped, barely, alone, without her family, and came to this country and eventually became a college professor. She wrote two very famous books. The first one is The Fountainhead, which is a fictional tale of a architect who does not design his buildings like anybody else's buildings, and he is of course taken to task for not being a conformist. But the second book is Atlas Shrugged, and it is about objectivism, which many people have decided was a celebration of greed or of corporate of corporations, being allowed to make as much money as they want, and that being a bad thing. And what it really does is it takes a very stark look at our thinking ability and how easy it is for human beings in general to let other people carry the ball. We all want safe streets, but we don't think about how those streets get to be safe. We all want, good roads, but we vote down tax initiatives that will be used to maintain those roads. The question is, how is it that you expect those things to be funded if you're not willing to pay for them? And in this book, that is broadened out onto a national stage. And so it takes on what would happen if the movers and shakers of the world, the people who actually get things done and know how to get things done, simply stopped. Simply stopped sharing their gift, stopped sharing their ability, and disappear. And I can tell you that the world goes to hell in a handbasket pretty fast. And it's really one of the main reasons why socialism always seems like such an attractive idea, but why it can't work. Because it assumes that everybody is willing to do their share, and that is the part that isn't true. Because the lazy people want to eat too. It's fine. If you work for it, you can eat it. Never mind. This coming from a Democrat. Democrats aren't supposed to like Atlas Shrugged, but I'm technically a Republican, but not really. I think they've got some kind of wacko ideas right now. Okay. So that's a first layer on those. I think that that's where I'm going to stop on this. As I review this video, and I hope that I did some of that, at least that last bit, on camera. If not, I'll scrap the video and start again. But I think that I will divide this into parts, and this is just part 1. So stay tuned, and we'll do part 2. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've learned a little something about using Derwent Inktense in this particular manner, and that you don't have to worry about using them in a book like this, just so you can see. Yes, they do bleed through, but as you can see, the dried parts here and here, it doesn't stay that way. You only see it here because it's wet. So the water bleeds through, the color does not. So until next time, this is C.L. Aldridge at C.L. Aldridge Art, signing out. See you then.